Today I'm going to be showing you how I do my portrait sketches. This is just my process and really what goes through my head when I'm sketching from reference photos. I'm going to be using my multicolored pens for this one, just so you guys can clearly see the mistakes I make and how I work around them. The very first thing I do is draw a circle to represent the head. After that, it's easy for me to figure out where the neck goes. The shoulders, the way I do them is I imagine that there are lines that go from her head to the tip of her shoulders. And what I'm really doing is looking at the negative space between the line I created and her neck. Since the left one is wider, then I know she's actually turned her other shoulder away from me, and that's just easier for me to understand and therefore easier for me to then draw. Next thing I do is imagine there are lines that go down the center of her face. I draw two side by side rather than just one, so it's easier for me to know where to place the nose at. Similar lines go across her face too and tell me where I want to place the eyes. These lines are especially important because they tell me whether the head is tilted or not. And then those lines just make it easier for me to draw the general shape of her face after. Next thing I do is draw the ears. I actually draw them from the bottom since that makes it easier for me to see where they're positioned on her head. And then I use the ears as a reference point to tell me where her nose ends because usually they line up. The nose, I just draw something that looks like a cone. I just make sure it's really centered along the lines that I drew. What was really important is the circle I draw to represent the tip of the nose because this tells me whether someone's nose is upturned or not. Like for me, I usually find it hard to remember to leave enough space for her chin. I used to draw the mouth a lot bigger than it actually is. So now I draw the chin first to make sure I leave out enough space so I don't make the mouth look too large. The same thing I do with the shoulders. Then I draw lines from the side of her nose to the tip of her eyebrows, which then creates something like a triangle. And that tells me where I need to place her eyebrows and her eyes at. If the triangle is a little wider, then I know the eyes are placed lower on the head. And if it's more narrow, then that would tell me that her eyes are placed further up. I don't really worry too much about making the eyes look even. At this stage, I have the room to correct myself later. And I'm not going to focus too much on the hair this time because I think that deserves its own separate video. I don't really put too much detail on the hair anyway, so there's that. I just really make sure I get the general shape of it and make sure I give it enough room to sit on top of the skull rather than just laying it directly on the face, which is something I used to do before too. And now that I'm done with the rough sketch, I take my blue pen, and this is really important because it's the equivalent of me using a sharper, maybe darker pencil on top of a light initial sketch if I were doing this with pencils. This is great sketching with a dark and a lighter pen because now that I have the rough sketch, I can see where my mistakes are, and so it's easier for me to know where to do it right this time. Then also the lighter sketch looks like they're part of the shading, which is nice. But I do want to go over some of the shading with the red pen after, since a lot of it kind of got lost with the contrasts with a much darker pen, so that's why I'm just going over it lightly with the red pen. Sketching someone's side profile is a whole other thing. That's why rather than actually just drawing a circle to represent the head, I draw the general shape of her face first. I don't worry too much about the nose the very first time. I just really want to make sure that I'm getting the right arch of her neck first. I'm making sure I'm leaving enough room for her neck to sit behind her ear because I used to draw the necks under the ears before. And then I draw a circle to represent the back of the skull so I don't draw the head too small. The ears are especially important when you're drawing someone's side profile too because the tip of the ear tells me where to place the eye. And I know everyone's faces are different, but it's a good starting point. And then I draw another set of lines that extend her eyes to the tip of her eyebrows, and this tells me how high I want to place her eyebrows on top of her eyes. I also use the eyes to figure out where to start drawing her nose because people's noses are the one thing that varies a lot from person to person. I also draw another line that connects her eyes to where her nose ends, and this tells me how wide the nose is. And then I extend that line lower to where her mouth ends. so I can figure out how to begin with the mouth too. Also make sure I get the right amount of curve that goes when I'm connecting the chin to the neck, because this tells me how far the neck is extended away from the body. And then I just go over the details. I even messed up her nose on this one. I messed up a lot with this, but that's okay. I can work around that with the blue pen after. And then I just draw the general shape of the hair. And because I drew that circle for the back of the skull, then I'm not making the head too small or too large. And then I just go over it with my blue pen again for the darker parts and some of the details too. The third one is really interesting because I messed up a lot with this one. I've been wanting to draw her for a while because I usually draw faces that are more angular with sharp lines, and I wanted to try something different, to draw someone with rounder features. You can tell this isn't something that came easy for me because I messed up, because usually with this angle I make the eyes too large, and so I made sure I didn't do that, but I messed up anyway by placing her eyes lower on her head. But that's fine, I figured it out right away, so I could go over and fix it with a blue pen. Now you'll see throughout this video that it takes me quite a few tries to even get the shapes and the lines that I want, and I'm okay with that. Sometimes it even makes the whole process easier. I really overcompensated with the shading for this one. I'm really trying to distract from the errors I made with her face. And then I ended up oversaturating it. But I did think that in the end I pulled through and saved it as best as I could. This last one I added because when I'm drawing this angle, I draw the general shape of the face first. I actually draw a circle to represent just the side of the head because that's what's shown on the photo. And this just tells me the angle that he's facing. And I also drew his eyebrows first because I found that drawing the flat front of someone's forehead makes it easy for me to draw their eyebrows underneath that. And then I draw these, what I call Spiderman eyes. And really I'm just drawing the hollow where the eye sockets are placed, and it lets me know where to put the eyes at. And then I do the same thing and I draw the same cone for the nose. I'm making sure I really get the tip of the nose right because it's turned a little bit downwards, so I see more of that tip of his nose. And I'm making sure I'm conscious of that when I'm shading. I also draw the ends of the lips first. I feel like this makes it easier for me to draw the rest of the mouth, as this tells me whether they're smiling. And then the irises too. There's something that is surprisingly hard for me to get all the time when I'm drawing. I use the whites of the eyes as a reference for when I'm drawing them, but this doesn't always work. So every time I draw, it's different, and I always mess up with the initial sketch, and it only works out after I do the second layer on top of it. I also draw lines for his cheekbones too, because it's a very important part of the shading for this one. So I made sure to remember that. Then I go over the details with my darker pen. And that's the end of the tutorial. Thank you guys for watching. If you made it this far, I have another watercolor tutorial coming after. It's more detailed than my last watercolor painting video, so watch out for that, and thank you for watching.